Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Peugeot. The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by MediaClip, Advertech Printing, and School Photographers of America.
Hello again, and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Peugeot, and today we're joined by Anika Jackson, the founder and chief strategist of Your Brand Amplified. Hi, Anika. How are you today?
Good, Gary. I'm much better now that I'm seeing your smiling face and appearing on your podcast. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for having me. So for those who aren't familiar with your company, what does Your Brand Amplified do?
Yeah, thank you for asking. We have a podcast, which you've been on, called Your Brand Amplified. But we're also a full service agency. I'm a very small boutique agency that focuses on strategy. So brand, marketing, PR strategy, overall communications. Mm-hmm. Some of my colleagues call me more of an outsourced co-founder because I always like to look at the big picture of what's really going to drive your business forward and how do we really partner with you. So I'm always thinking of, this company would be a really great partner with these other people that I know, or this might be a funding source. So I'm always trying to think about that as well as focus on what is your brand? Who are you? How are you showing up? And are you showing up correctly to the right audience? And so we really take people through a process. We have the retainer clients, and then we also have a program that we're launching right now called the Brand Amplifier. And it's for people who want to either do it yourself, online modules, worksheets, kind of really learn all of the things for themselves or their team. And then there's one with coaching. And then there's one where we put together your website, all of your brand materials, your social media content, your PR, all of that.
Great. So how did you get involved with this? What turned you on to being a brand expert?
Oh, man. I accidentally, I think.
That's how most people's careers go, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always loved bringing people together and connection and seeing how people work together and the joy that happened when people had that aha moment of discovering something, whether it was music or a product or a service that would make their lives better. So it actually started when I was in high school, growing up in Lawrence, Kansas. I loved music, and I was always going to Kansas City to go listen to music on the weekends with my friends. And I got asked to start promoting some events and some DJs. And I said, yeah, sure. I'm already going to these events. I may as well do that. And that's really how I started. And it was very organic. And then it moved into a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm going to age myself a little bit, but this is before the internet. I
remember those days too.
Yeah. AOL chat rooms, things like that. But I dug my teeth. I started in events, but then I ended up doing launch marketing for brands, for magazines. When official Xbox magazine first came out, I did the launch marketing and was the marketing manager for the publication. And so I put together B2B and B2C programs, depending on what messaging do we want to give to potential advertisers, then to get them in the magazine, and then how do we take their messages and our message and create really cool programs, events, contests, direct mail campaigns, other things to reach to the ideal audience.
But now in the digital world, how has branding changed? Because I think if you were to launch, let's say, PS5 magazine, it wouldn't exactly resonate with the target market. They would say, why are you sending me this physical piece of media, right? So everything's changed. Rather than focus on what's changed, why don't we talk about what stayed the same? Because a lot of people don't even really understand what branding is. So what is branding in your vernacular?
I love this question. And you and I spoke about this briefly. A lot of people think brand is your logo. Your logo is your mark, right? It's the way that people recognize your brand, but it is not your brand. Your brand is all of the things that encompass who you are as a company and as an entrepreneur. So it always starts with, what problem are you solving for people with your product or your service? It starts with your mission, vision, values. Who are your customer personas? And how do you message properly to them? And so all of those things go into the creation of your brand. And when you look at your logo, right, it's not just, oh, I like this logo, I like these colors. Branding experts go a lot deeper. So we'll look at shapes, we'll look at your competitors' materials, we'll look at what colors are you using. Are the colors evoking the emotions that you want people to feel when, they're looking at you as a potential place to buy? So one thing that we really see that's the same as it was, that people may not have put as much of an emphasis on before, is authenticity. People want to know who's behind the brand. And so that's why it's really important to think about branding, marketing, PR all together. Nowadays, it's not just siloed. Some people still operate that way, but it doesn't really work to keep things separate. You have to have an integrated strategy. And that's where I would say digital has changed the landscape a lot, because now you take a piece of content, you can purpose it over your social media channels, your newsletter, put it on your website. For instance, when this episode is released, I will put it on all my social media. I will also link to the podcast from my website. So that will help, that builds up more audience recognition for both of us, more thought leadership, right? And that authority. And that's also like, you can take a piece of PR content and use it to post all over your social media, because then it's not just you telling your story, but it's that third party validation of a journalist recognizing that you are an authority in that area. So I know that's a lot of information.
and for a lot of my audience who are small business people, that's a big chunk of work that they think they have to do. But I would guess instinctively, most of them probably already know that, know a lot of what you're talking about. They know the personas, they know how they're perceived in the community. Would you recommend a small company, like say under 50 or 100 employees, look at doing a brand reanalysis? How often?
Ooh, I don't know that I could put a time frame to that. I've worked with people who've been in business 20 years, and by going through some of the methods that we use, they realized that they were speaking to the completely wrong audience.
Right.
They've been in business 20 years. They've been doing the same thing. They've been doing actually digital marketing for that long.
Right.
I do think it's good, just like how people do strategic planning, right? And then you have your annual plan. So look every 3 to 5 years minimum. I mean, I think it's good every year to look at, because I know even for my own business, I've niched down. I've like looked at, okay, what do I really want to do? Who do I really want to target to work with? And it's always evolving. Now, I know for your industry, it's a little more clear in some ways, because you're servicing people who need to get photos, or they need to get printing or graphics or other things done. So it's a very specific kind of product. So I think one of the biggest things, honestly, for local businesses to do is look at their SEO. And so that means look at your website. Make sure that you're using the right keywords that show that you're local. So if people are in Scranton, I don't know why I picked that name, but just pulled it out of my head. So if you're in Scranton and you are the 1 hour photo shop, or that was what you did, and now you've created all these other ancillary businesses to continue operating, you're going to want to make sure that when people Google, 1 hour photo or graphic design or whatever the other things that you're doing, that you're going to be the first one to come up. And so the way to do that is to make sure that your keywords on your website include local, photographer Scranton, or like all the different things that you can do. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here.
No, I know. But I think it's a good refresher, because, what I encounter with some folks in our audience, they're long established businesses. They've been in their communities a long time, and the community may have a picture, if you will, pardon the pun there, of what the business is, but they've changed. Like you mentioned the word 1 hour photo, right? That's not really a phrase people use anymore, because it was really built around the technology of processing a roll of film in an hour, which was, back in the day, that was pretty revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
Now it's, why would you have to wait that long to print a digital picture? So they've had to modify or change their branding and their approach and all that. But it's still very difficult to communicate. And I think that's one of the things, where I'm thinking, a smaller company has to become more of their own publicist, right? As opposed to just, and even a content creator for once, to some point, What do you think is the first thing a business like that, so you've been established, but may have changed its offerings. Maybe they think of a restaurant that's changed its menu completely. Where would you start? Because you can't do it all at once.
Right. I would start with your brand identity. With your new offerings, are you still targeting the right audience in your messaging for marketing and PR? Or are you offering something that local schools would love? But you have but that hasn't been a target of yours. So think about those 2 to 3 really clear customer personas that you would want to get business from, that will give you enough business to continue operating. Because I know that's something we all have to think about, especially, you know, in these times, and think about what the messaging is going to be for each of those. So it could be different. It could be the reason why you want to work with us is whether it's price, convenience, the excellent, you know, quality, service, all of those things. Think about what makes you different perhaps than other companies in the area, and then use that to create different messages for those 2 or 3 key audience personas.
One of the things that's happened, unfortunately, is many of them may not even have competitors in the area. They may be the only, there used to be a 1-hour photo store on every corner, and now there, you know, it's one town in per city. Sometimes there's no even camera stores in a city anymore. So what they have to do is even introduce themselves to a newer generation and make themselves relevant to, you know, Gen Z and millennials who did not grow up processing film, right? So it's a whole different communication strategy.
Yeah, that really is. And going back to that authenticity again, those generations particularly want to know who you are. So not just the services you're going to provide, but who's behind the business? Why should they care? What are your values? And I know that gets a little nuanced because camera store, you know, you're not going to be political necessarily. I mean, you could be or not, but they want to see, like, how are you invested in the community? And so I think that's a great story for these companies to use, because they've been longstanding in the community. They can show that they have this tradition, but that they're also pivoting to the new times. And then think about how are millennials and Gen Z using photos and technology. And I know you and I both are professors as well as podcasters and everything else we do. And it's really interesting to see how they use things now. Because I know for like my class that I just finished, they all had final projects. They had to do videos. They used a lot of photos. They used a lot of technology. I think a lot of them used Canva, but there are other technologies that they could have used. Or like if they were actually doing a physical presentation instead of a virtual one, they would want to know that they could go to this shop and get their presentation turned around really quickly and get everything they need.
The other challenge, though, that I see with that, I want to pivot a little bit. Like we talked a little bit, I mentioned restaurants, but you know, nowadays, if you look at like the fast food scene, right? Like to pick your big companies, your McDonald's, your Burger King, your Wendy's, all of them have astonishingly similar menus. They all have burgers, they all have chicken, they all have, you know, there's really not differentiation among product anymore along there. When you have a product that is hard to distinguish, right? Differentiation is very challenging. So, and that's one of the challenges that I think photo companies run into, because, you know, a photo mug is a photo mug. And a lot of it, you know, you can get them online for a couple bucks, or you can pay $8 at your local photo store. That's where a lot of companies tend to go down the pricing rat hole, right? Discount.
Oh, yeah.
What is there was a long way for me to get around to that question of, if you're having difficulty differentiating, how can you not go down the price cutting rat hole?
That's a really big question. I want to ask you something before I answer this. Yeah. So Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's, they might have similar products, but do you have a preference for one over the other?
Me personally, I avoid them like the plague if I can. But if I were to, I would probably lean towards the King. So
okay. And why is that?
I just like how Whopper tastes.
Okay. See, so they do have some differentiation.
Yeah. But what's funny is McDonald's knocked off the Whopper, and Burger King knocked off the Big Mac. So that's where I was thinking of that.
Oh, yeah. But I know, like, if I'm on a road trip and I'm trying to figure out which fast food place I want to go, if I want chicken, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A.
Right.
If I want the best fries and I want to have a really fresh burger, honestly, I'll probably go to Wendy's. Or if I feel like having a Frosty, or so there are certain things that I like better than others at each of those places. So that's one way to think about, if you have a product that everybody else has, what are those little differentiation factors that make you better? The other thing is that price, doesn't equal value. We do live in a society where people are always looking for the discount. And I think you and I both know in our businesses, it's the same amount of work, whether you discount or not. And if you discount your prices, people tend to expect a lot more, even though they're not willing to pay for it.
Right.
Where people who are willing to pay more, they're happy to pay that much. They know you're going to do good work.
Right.
And it's a little bit easier. They get it. They know that things take time. Like in the world of PR, I can have somebody who's like, oh, I have a $2,000 budget. Well, I can do this much. But if somebody comes to me with a $4,000, $6,000 or $8,000 budget, I can do a lot more with that, because you have to think about the time that you're investing in your people, in your space, in your marketing and everything else. I would argue that I would rather go to a local store to support local and buy an $8 mug, because I know I'm going to get it right there. I can feel it. I can see what the materials are. I can tell which ones are going to last better. I can get it right there, packaged it up. Whereas when you order stuff online, even if it's a big company, you might not get it on time. It might be broken. The quality might not be the same. You can't touch it. And so I think really for local businesses, particularly, going after that know, like, and trust, make sure that people understand how invested you are in the community. What do you do for your give back? Or how do you invest in the community? Do you give money? Do you donate time as a business? Things like that do make a difference in communities.
One thing that a lot of these retailers that I've been talking about do is they do a lot of classes, either photo safaris or, in-store crafting or that kind of stuff, which is very cool. It seems to me like the Gen Z and the millennial demographic really wants to be engaged at that level in that process.
Oh, yeah. Experience.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because it's not necessarily them sitting in an environment and you're talking at them.
Yeah. But you're still offering your expertise. You're offering
right.
space.
But they have to be engaged is what I'm saying. It's very much, they may be talking amongst themselves half the time.
Yeah, but those are fantastic strategies. I know so many people who, I live outside of Los Angeles, and I know a lot of people are like, I want to do a tour of all of the cool art, graffiti art all over the city in different neighborhoods. And so they'll go on photo safaris on their own. But if it was something where a company that is associated with photography was putting it together,
right,
it goes, maybe a little bit outside of your normal realm. You're not staying in your brick and mortar. You're taking people out and about,
right, or
through a slideshow or a number of things. But then there's also so many community organizations, friends groups that are always looking for fun things to do collectively. And so that's a great way to, again, establish who you are in the community and to use those as entry points. And then you have really easy access to the items that millennials and Gen Z could pick up and buy while they're at your store, whether it's signing for the photo safari or whether they're doing, like you said, a crafting event or anything like that in store.
When I speak to a lot of the independent retailers that I'm talking about, there's an age gap there. Many of them are older and looking to retire, or not even looking to retire, but maybe they have like 15, 20 years left. They're looking at things like TikTok and Instagram reels and things like that. Is there any really quantifiable use cases and studies that have been done, but where that's like super necessary for businesses to be doing those things, or is it just trendy because people can do them at low cost?
Yeah, that's a mixed bag. That is a mixed bag. It's a necessary evil, but it's better to pick one social media channel to really focus on based on who your audience is and the demographic of your audience and how you're really going to reach local. Especially if your business is hyper local, how are you going to best reach local people.
Mhm.
And so that might not even be those. It might be next door. It
Mhm.
might be local groups on Facebook that you're
Right.
just a member of and that you're able to share information about
Mhm.
the cool things that you're doing. And the other issue with social media is it's always changing. We see what's going on with Twitter right now. People
Mhm.
are fleeing. There are all these other new social media channels coming
Mhm.
up. We don't know what's going to happen to them. We're
Mhm.
also seeing trends towards video. So if you
Mhm.
are going to post, you try to use video. Doesn't have to
Mhm.
be fantastic. It can be you and your phone
Mhm.
and just, introducing who you are. You can
Mhm.
really think about that, introducing who
Mhm.
you are, talking
Mhm.
about the history of your business, talking about what great things you have coming up. That is all pieces of content that you can easily create that
Mhm.
and turn into marketing messages and choose one platform, or like my team will post stuff on TikTok and then they'll repurpose and put it on Reels on
Right.
Instagram.
It just seems to me like it used to be back in the day, if you were doing like direct mail,
Yeah.
you knew the return on investment there was going to be 1.5 to 2% or whatever it was. Or if you did radio ads, you could hear the radio ads, know that people were listening and all that. It seems to me that the ROI bit on social is harder for someone with limited resources to quantify.
Yes, you are 100% correct. I speak to other professors because I do teach digital media management at
Mhm.
USC, and there's really not such a thing as organic anymore. You
Mhm. Yeah.
have to be willing to boost posts, put
You
some
gotta
ad dollars in,
Right.
and with the algorithms changing and then things like Apple privacy,
Mhm.
that really hurt a lot of businesses and hurt how they were targeting, and
Yeah.
their money wasn't being effectively spent.
Mhm.
The best thing, honestly, if you're going to put money into ad dollars,
Mhm.
would be do it on Google,
Mhm. Yeah,
because
just
people are always, Google's the number one search platform. People
Mhm.
are going to be looking at it. People are going to be Googling, quick
Mhm.
photo gifts in my city.
Mhm.
You want to be the person who comes up.
And aren't there some platforms that Google doesn't crawl? I mean, because I don't think they crawl Facebook per se.
Yeah.
So if you're spending a lot of money there, you're not going to get it coming out of your Google results. Whereas,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And Facebook, Instagram, think about them. Even though they're different platforms, they're all Meta.
Mhm.
They service ads the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're putting money to that, that's not going to help you with Google search.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, like, some people might do how-to videos
Right.
for different photo things and put them on YouTube. YouTube is now going to podcasting, and that's the platform that they're really pushing out in 2023.
Right.
Pinterest, that's another great place that you could be
Mhm.
to show different photo ideas and how to use photos on different products.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting you said, because I know a lot of these businesses, have the content. They are willing to do this stuff. It's a dizzying array of choices with X amount of time. And that's really what the challenge is. It's not whether I should do it, it's where and how much time. And now it's how much money do I spend on it? Because like you said, it's more or less a pay to play environment now, if you want to be seen.
Yeah. And I would love to make a recommendation of a platform that I know of. I don't make any money off of recommending this. They're called Simplified. The website is simplified.com. It is a platform where you can post all of your social media on all the platforms through it, but it also gives you caption ideas, hashtags, best times to post. It gets rid of the need for other products because you can create everything in there. So you can actually edit video through the platform. You can also create everything through the platform. So you don't need Canva necessarily, and Magisto or Adobe or whatever suite you're using to edit videos. You can do it all in there, and they have a freemium model. So I'd encourage anybody to check that out, because scheduling your posts like that will also cut down on the amount of time that you're putting on into social.
Right.
But I will also say, I'll caveat that by saying one of the biggest things people fail to do, they'll make a post and then they won't engage with the audience.
Right.
So when people start
responding,
putting whatever comments they want to, you have to respond to those people. You have to engage with their audience. And that is one way to help audiences grow organically. a small bit, but if it's a way to start.
Yeah, no, that's a great recommendation because I think, they all know they have to do it. And, they understand you have to spend money to make money, but they also don't want to waste money. I think that's where I think, like you said, there's a dizzying array of choices. I mean, you just rattled off how many platforms out there.
Yeah. And there's so many more that we didn't mention.
Yeah. And you can't, I mean, you haven't even mentioned LinkedIn, which is probably
right.
for my audience or for me personally, probably my biggest platform because I'm a B2B type person.
Exactly.
So, and they're getting into all those things too, the videos and all
so
that.
Much.
And boy, they want you to pay for that too.
They do. And the other thing is that LinkedIn, like other platforms, doesn't want you to leave their platform. Right. So they want original content posted on their platform. They don't want, hey, check out my blog post, go to my website. Right. That's not going to be as high in the algorithm for LinkedIn. Right. But that is another way to create relationships with local community and get involved with, for instance, a local school that all their sports teams need photos, they need photo printing, they might need gifts for the coaches, for the teachers, I'm just thinking because my daughter just ended tennis for the season and thinking about all the things that we had to do with that and getting the photos taken and like picking what we were going to, which photos do you want? And do you want them on magnets or do you want them on this or that? How do you want all those products? And we used a local company and, it's fantastic.
Yeah, there's that's been a big business for one of my segments. The volume photography segment is the sports and event business has been doing great. So getting back to the core, we've kind of spent a lot of time on, social media and that kind of stuff. What is the singular thing you would advise someone about safeguarding their brand, right? In order to, because it is an asset. It's when I tell my students is, your goodwill, your brand, that's an asset. It's just like any other piece of your business and you need to protect it and preserve it.
It's arguably the most important thing that you have, right? Because it is your identity. Again, it's not just your logo, it's how you show up, how you differentiate yourself from others, and safeguarding the brand. I think you just have to remind people over and over again who you are and make sure that you are servicing the people that you really want to and that are the right market for what you're offering right now. And that's something we always have to evaluate. I know over the last 3 years, I've gone from, okay, I'm just doing PR to, no, we're going to offer all these services to, oh, maybe I only want to offer these services. And am I really reaching the right people? So how am I retargeting? And then who am I partnering with to offer everything else? Right. Yeah. And so I think that's, those partnerships, those strategic, the thinking, you just have to spend a lot of time being versus just doing so that you can get to the doing, but the doing is effective.
If people wanted to learn more about you and your company, where would they go?
Well, if you're going to social, you can look me up as Anika Jackson on LinkedIn. I'm Amplify with Anika on all social media, as well as we have Your Brand Amplified. And then my website is yourbrandamplified.co. And you can learn more about me, my team, what we do, see some testimonials, case studies, and then also our Brand Amplifier program, which is the program we're launching, which is really targeted towards those businesses that want to make sure that their brand is set up correctly, that they've really thought through. And again, I've had companies test this that have been in business 20 years and said, oh, wow, I just got so much more clarity. And I realized that I'm not even messaging and targeting the people that I really want to work with, and change their entire strategy based on that.
Well, great. And that is launching early this year. So we'll be sure to check it out. Thank you so much, Anika, for your time and best wishes for a great 2023.
Awesome. Thank you to you, Carrie.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.